Many of us learned in school that Athens is the birthplace of democracy. It was also the birthplace of the Athenian Empire, which they euphemistically called the Delian League. What we really have here is democracy at home and imperialism abroad. So here we have democratic Athens and Attica and its colonies in yellow. And if you look very closely, you can see the little island of Delos, which was very much a colony of Athens, not the leader of the Delian League. Now granted, the democracy in Athens was very limited compared to later democracies, but nonetheless, we have this basic dynamic, which we see again with the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. Now, a republic is a non-hereditary form of government, so you have no aristocracy, no royal family, no king, no queen, no emperor. And there were many democratic elements to the republic. You had the Senate in particular, but you had soldiers sitting in their own legislature, and you had the citizens' tribunal. Whereas the empire, you have no more democracy. You have the emperor and the military behind the emperor. Now the Senate was there, but it was mainly window dressing. So the founding fathers like Madison and Jefferson deeply admired the republic, but they didn't care for the empire. Edward Watts described how the Second Punic War in particular, among other foreign wars, had a major erosive effect on the republic, and he compared this to the United States after World War II, mainly thinking of the Korean and Vietnam Wars. Watts wasn't the only one. The U.S. Senator Robert Byrd wrote a book about how the Roman Senate gave up its power and became window dressing, giving that power to emperors. And then famously, we had Arthur Schlesinger's 1973 book, The Imperial Presidency, published just as the Vietnam War was winding down. Now, none of these people were calling the president an emperor, but what they were talking about is how executive power was growing and resembling a monarchy far more than the founders intended, particularly regarding war powers. According to the Constitution, only Congress has the authority to declare war, but Korea and Vietnam were both examples of wars where there was no congressional declaration of war. Just a note on terminology here, some people use colonialism and imperialism as synonyms. There is some overlap, not just the things you see in the middle there, but people talk about colonizing a country, not imperializing it. Anyway, I like to distinguish them because the colonies, the English colonies of the Atlantic seaboard, of what became the United States, are very different from the colonies the Western European powers established in Africa during the 1800s, for example. The economic systems are different, mercantilism versus capitalism, and crucially, you have different military technology. So in colonialism, you had Americans with muskets fighting Indians with bows and arrows. In imperialism, you have English, French, and other imperial powers with machine guns fighting Africans with pre-industrial weapons. So you can appreciate the difference there. Look at this map in 1945 after World War II. In particular, look at the democratic English, the UK trying to establish a North-South empire in Africa, and the democratic French trying to establish a West-East empire. So we have the Greek example, the Roman example, we have Western European examples, and we have American examples. So here are US military bases all over the world. Many people are uncomfortable calling it an American empire, but it is an empire, even if you don't use the terminology. A lot of this is a legacy of the Cold War. You had the USSR and China that they wanted to contain, beginning in the Truman administration. That's what they called it, a containment policy, trying to stop them from expanding. And that goes very far in explaining the Korean War there at the top and the Vietnam War there at the bottom. Both containment wars, both civil wars also. Here's a list of countries where the United States has military bases now, over 700 worldwide. This has bothered a lot of people for a long time. One of them was the late Chalmers Johnson, a professor, scholar, veteran, and CIA consultant. This is just one essay he published in the New York Times. But he wrote a much-noted trio of books about this very topic. And here's the last of the trio. The subtitle is indicative, The Last Days of the American Republic. So that's what they're worried about. And he would use the term American Empire. Patrick Buchanan is also somebody who's been talking about this for a long time. There's his book from 1999. And on the left, just two of several essays he's published talking about this very topic. So, democracy at home, imperialism abroad. If you were a subjugated country, a citizen of a subjugated country, you could not be blamed for calling that a double standard or hypocritical. Probably the most neutral way we could describe it would be a paradox. And here's a definition from the online etymology dictionary. This meaning goes back to the 1560s. Something that is seemingly self-contradictory, yet not illogical or obviously untrue. It's a paradox. What's the answer? I'm not sure anybody knows. I will tell you, there is life for a democracy after losing an empire, and the most stellar example of that would be the United Kingdom. They used to have the empire where the sun never sets, as the phrase went, and that was literally true. The sun was shining on some part of the globe where the Brits controlled territory, and now they have the Falkland Islands and Northern Ireland, and that's it. So they don't really have an empire anymore, but they still have a democracy. So what's the answer to the paradox? Does it even have an answer? I don't know. I'll just leave it there for you to think about.